My hands shake now. Look at them, like dried leaves caught in a draft. The doctors tell me it is just age, just the nerves wearing thin like the insulation on an old wire. But I know better. They are shaking because they are remembering. Back then in Essen, they were steady as stone. They had to be. I was a man of the line, a creature of the factory floor where the world made sense. You pulled a lever, the hydraulic press descended. You calibrated the caliper, the metal fit. Cause and effect, a holy, predictable rhythm of steel and grease. I trusted the machine because the machine had no malice. It had rules. If you respected the tolerance, if you kept the gears oiled, the machine would not kill you. I try to hold on to that thought. The smell of industrial lubricant and the warm hum of the electric motors, but it slips away, replaced by the damp, rot-sweet stench of the cellar. It is 1942, or maybe the beginning of 43. The dates blur in my mind like ink in the rain. We are in the bowels of Stalingrad, huddled in the basement of what used to be a bakery or a shop. The ceiling is low, pressing down on us, dripping condensation that freezes before it hits the dirt floor. It is quiet down here, but not the peace of the factory after the whistle blows. This is a suffocating silence, a heavy blanket pulled over a corpse. The earth itself seems to be holding its breath. Every few minutes the ground shudders, a dull rhythmic thumping that vibrates in the hollow of your chest. Artillery, kilometers away perhaps, but down here. You feel it in your teeth. I close my eyes and try to turn the shelling into the sound of the stamping presses back home. But the rhythm is wrong. It is erratic, angry. It has no logic. There is a rat in the corner. I see its eyes reflecting the weak yellow light of the kerosene lantern. It is fat, bloated on things I do not want to think about. It scuttles across a pile of broken masonry, claws scratching against stone. Next to me a boy, I cannot remember his name. Only that he had acne scars on his chin and looked like he should still be carrying a school satchel. Jerks at the sound. His thumb slips on the safety of his car 98K. The metallic of the safety catch disengaging is louder than the artillery. I flinch. My body reacts before my mind does. Muscles locking, breath hitching. In that fraction of a second, I am not seeing the boy or the rifle. I am seeing the spring-loaded striker of a shrapnel mine 35. The S-mine. The bouncing Betty. My mind, cursed with the clarity of a mechanic, disassembles the device in an instant. I see the three-pronged pressure fuse. I see the inner tube sliding up the outer jacket. I hear the hiss of the 4.5-second delay pellet burning down. Then the propellant charge kicks the canister into the air, waist height, and the steel balls tear through everything soft and living. Richter, the voice pulls me back. The mine vanishes. The boy is looking at me, eyes wide and rimmed with red fatigue. He clicks the safety back on. Save. I thought I heard something, the boy whispers. I exhale, the breath pluming white in the freezing air. Keep your finger off the metal until you mean it, I say, my voice sounding like gravel grinding together. The machine doesn't know you're nervous. It only knows pressure. I look down at my hands. They are wrapped in fingerless wool gloves, stained with soot and oil. I flex the fingers. These are my tools now, not for creating, but for unmaking. I am a sapper. My job is to find the things that want to kill us and kill them first. It is a perversion of everything I learned in Essen. There we built things to last. Here, everything is built to end. The heavy oak door at the top of the stairs creaks. A draft of air, impossibly colder than the cellar, sweeps down, carrying the smell of burning rubber and pulverized brick. Our unteroffizier descends. He looks like a ghost, covered in white dust, his face a mask of gray exhaustion. He does not greet us. There are no greetings left in this city, only orders and the silence of those who are gone. He walks to the center of the room and unfolds a piece of paper, smoothing it against the rough brick wall. It is a map, hand-drawn, confused lines of charcoal and pencil. Listen up, he rasps. His voice is dry, brittle. Command wants the sector cleared by dawn. The Ivan lines have stiffened near the river. He stabs a finger at a square drawn in heavy black lead. The grain elevator. A murmur ripples through the squad. We have heard stories of the elevator, a concrete fortress, a tomb. Intelligence says they've turned it into a nest. The unteroffizier continues, his eyes scanning our faces. Landing on me. Tripwires, booby traps, mines on the stairs, mines under the bodies. He looks at me. Richter, you're on point. It's crawling with their traps. I need you to smell them before we step on them. I stare at the map. The square doesn't look like a building. It looks like a schematic, a diagram of a machine designed to grind human beings into paste. The fear rises in my throat, a cold metallic taste. I want to tell him that I am a factory worker, not a magician. I want to tell him that chaos cannot be dismantled with wire cutters. But I look at the boy with the acne scars, and I look at Hans, cleaning his fingernails with a bayonet in the corner. Hans, who gave me half his bread ration yesterday without a word. Richter, the unteroffizier, presses. I nod. I see it. Good. Get your gear. We move in 5. I reach for my satchel. It is heavy with the weight of crimpers, probes, and friction tape. I touch the cold steel of the wire cutters. They feel familiar, an extension of my hand. If this war is a broken machine, perhaps I can fix the path, one wire at a time. But deep down, I know the truth. You cannot fix a machine that was built to destroy itself. Wait, think. Wish you are the wall between us and the dark. Crack, zing, crack, thwack. Crack, thwack. I press my face into the frozen mud, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This is not the factory. You cannot calibrate a sniper. You cannot reason with a bullet. Richter, the elevator. We have to move. I look up. The grain elevator looms ahead, a massive gray silhouette against the night sky. It is huge, a cathedral of industry. It looks like the factories back home, but twisted, menacing. We crawl, elbows digging into the ice, moving from cover to cover while the sniper chews at the ground behind us. We reach the outer perimeter, the base of the silos. The concrete here is scarred by heavy weapons fire, pockmarked craters the size of dinner plates. We reach the main entrance. It is a gaping maw of darkness. Light, I whisper. Hands unclips a flashlight, shielding the lens with his fingers so only a sliver of yellow spills out. He aims it at the doorway. My breath stops. The beam cuts through the gloom and reveals the space beyond the threshold. It is not just a tripwire. It is a tapestry. Dozens of wires crisscross the hallway at different heights, ankle, knee, waist, neck. Some are taut, some hang loose. They are connected to things I cannot identify. Clumps of metal, artillery shells wired together, glass bottles filled with liquid. It looks like the inside of a radio, complex and unintelligible. But it is the wires themselves that freeze my blood. They are not just tripwires. They are interwoven. If you cut one, the tension shifts on another. It is a web, a living, tension-based organism designed to sense the slightest intrusion. Hans lowers the light, his face pale in the reflected glow. He looks at the web, then at me. Klaus, he whispers, and his voice is tight, strained with a fear I have never heard in him before. This is not one of ours. I've never seen anything like it. I stare into the dark throat of the elevator. My factory logic, my understanding of levers and gears, falters. This isn't a machine. It's a puzzle written in a language I do not speak, and the penalty for a single mistranslation is death. I stepped into the web. It was not a metaphor. The Russians had strung piano wire and rusted tripcords across the cavernous belly of the grain elevator like spiders weaving in a crypt. The air inside was thick enough to chew, a suffocating paste of fermented grain dust, rat droppings, and the copper tang of old blood. It smelled like a harvest that had been left to rot in the sun. My world narrowed down to the cone of Hans's shielded flashlight and the trembling tip of my wire cutters. Every step was a negotiation with death. I became a machine, suppressing the shivering of my own skin to focus on the task. I treated the hallway like a jammed assembly line back in Essen. Identify the fault, isolate the mechanism, bypass the trigger. I cut a taut line of fishing wire at ankle height, catching the loose end before it could snap back and strike the firing pin of a grenade wedged into a crack in the concrete. I sweated, the salt stinging my eyes, but I did not wipe it away. To wipe my brow would mean taking a hand off the tool, and the tool was the only thing keeping the ceiling from collapsing on our heads. We moved deeper into the silo. The darkness was absolute, a physical weight pressing against our chests. My squad, men who could storm a trench without flinching, were reduced to terrified children shuffling behind me. They trusted me. That was the burden. They believed my caution was a shield. They believed that if they walked exactly where I walked, if they breathed only when I breathed, the war could not touch them. They thought I could solve the chaos of Stalingrad with the same logic I used to fix a hydraulic press. I halted them at the base of a rusted iron staircase. Something was wrong with the floorboards. The wood was slightly discolored, the dust pattern disturbed. I raised a fist. The squad froze. Hans was right behind me, his breathing ragged. I knelt, placing my ear almost to the ground, and pried up the edge of a rotten plank with the tip of my bayonet. There it was, a pressure plate, but it was not standard issue. It was a crude, hateful thing, a slab of metal resting on a stiff spring, wired to a cluster of explosives packed underneath the foundation. It was designed to wait. It was designed for the second man or the third. It was designed to kill the medics who came for the first victim. I need silence. I whispered, absolute silence. I gestured for them to stay back, to press themselves against the walls. Hans moved to the side, taking up a position near a jagged hole in the silo wall that looked out over the burning city. He needed to cover the stairs while I worked. He was doing his duty. I was doing mine. I lowered myself prone. The mechanism was tricky. A double tension trigger. If I cut the wire, it blew. If I released the pressure, it blew. I had to slide a shim between the contact points to freeze it. My hands were steady. I was back in the factory. The world was geometry and physics. There was no fear in the math, only the correct solution and the incorrect one. I focused entirely on the gap between the copper plates. It was less than a millimeter. I breathed out, emptying my lungs to stop the microscopic tremors in my fingers. I was safe in the bubble of my own competence. Then the darkness broke. There was no sound of the shot, not really. Just a wet, heavy impact, like a side of beef dropped on a butcher's block. I flinched, my hands slipping. The shim sparked against the metal. I froze, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the fire to consume me. But the mine did not detonate. The silence returned, rushing back into the void, but it was different now. It was heavier. I turned my head. Hans was on the ground. He had not cried out. He had simply ceased to stand. The sniper's bullet had found him through the gap in the wall. The gap I had made him stand beside because I needed room to work. He lay crumpled in the dust, his eyes wide, staring at the ceiling of the cathedral. The flashlight rolled away, the beam spinning wildly before settling on his boot. I stared at him. My brain could not process the data. I had followed the procedure. I had identified the trap. I had halted the line. By all the laws of mechanics, we should be safe. But the logic had failed. My caution had bought the sniper a stationary target. My meticulousness was the accomplice. The squad stared at me. Their eyes were white discs in the gloom. They looked from Hans's body to the half-disarmed mine beneath my chest, then up to the gantries high above where the muzzle flash must have originated. They were waiting for orders. They were waiting for the Sapper to solve this. I looked at the mine. It was a complex puzzle, a beautiful, deadly riddle that required 5 more minutes of perfect concentration. If I moved, it might blow. If I stayed, the sniper would cycle his bolt and find the next man. The factory worker died in that moment. I did not finish the job. I did not secure the safety pin. I did not calibrate the tension. I rolled away from the death trap, scrambling to my feet, abandoning the delicate surgery for the blunt force of the hammer. Move! I screamed, the sound tearing at my throat. I grabbed my rifle and sprinted for the stairs. I did not check for tripwires. I did not look for pressure plates. I ran with a reckless, suicidal abandon, stomping on the metal grates, making enough noise to wake the dead. I wanted the sniper to hear me. I wanted him to look at me. I charged up the spiral staircase, my lungs burning with grain dust and rage. The caution was gone, replaced by a cold, white heat. I was no longer trying to survive. I was trying to destroy the machine that had betrayed me. I burst onto the upper gantry, a narrow walkway suspended 50 feet above the silo floor. The sniper was there, a shadow nestled in the rafters. He turned, surprised by the speed of the assault, fumbling to bring his long rifle to bear at close range. He was just a boy wrapped in rags. It didn't matter. He was a faulty gear. He was an obstruction. I didn't fire. I slammed into him, driving him back against the corrugated steel wall. We grappled in the dark, slipping on pigeon filth. He reached for a knife, but I was a worker. I had hands that could bend steel wire. I grabbed his wrist and twisted until I felt the mechanism snap. He screamed a high, thin sound that was swallowed by the vastness of the silo. I drove the butt of my rifle into him again and again until the resistance stopped, until the gear stopped turning. I stood over him panting, my chest heaving like a bellows. The adrenaline drained out of me, leaving me hollow. Below in the dark, my squad was shouting, asking if it was clear. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in grease and blood. They were shaking so violently, I dropped the rifle. It clattered on the metal grating, the sound echoing like a funeral bell. I walked back down the stairs. I walked past the squad, who were pressing forward to secure the perimeter. I walked back to the spot where Hans lay. I knelt beside him. The flashlight was still shining on his boot. I reached out to close his eyes, but my fingers would not obey me. They fluttered like moth wings. I, who could thread a fuse through the eye of a needle, could not perform this simple act of grace. I sat there in the dust for a long time, staring at the mine I had failed to disarm. I realized then that the war was not a system. It was not a factory. In a factory, if you are careful, you keep your fingers. In a factory, if you follow the rules, the product is perfect. But here, the rules were a lie. I had paused to save us from the mine, and the pause had killed my friend. The caution was the trap. The grain elevator dissolved into the gray light of memory. I am an old man now. My workshop in Essen is quiet. The air smells of oil and sawdust, not blood and rot. On my workbench sits a clockwork bird, a masterpiece of brass and springs. I have spent 3 weeks calibrating the wings. It is perfect. If I wind the key, it will flutter exactly 40 times before stopping. It is predictable. It is safe. I pick up the bird. It is heavy, cold. We thought war was a machine we could master. We thought we could dismantle it piece by piece, wire by wire, and understand its workings. We thought that if we were skilled enough, smart enough, careful enough, we could control the output. I set the bird down. I do not wind it, but it is not a machine. It is chaos. It is a harvest of broken things. It breaks you in the one place you think you are strongest. It took my steady hands and filled them with tremors. It took my logic and showed me that reason is no shield against a bullet. I survived because I stopped thinking and started destroying. I survived because I became the very thing I feared, a force without a trigger guard. I look at the tools on my wall. Wrenches, calipers, pliers. They are useless for the work that remains. You cannot repair a memory. You cannot reassemble a man. The factory is closed, and the machinery is rusted shut. This memory is a shard of glass I carry. Help me pull it out. Subscribe to keep this history alive.